Well, hi guys, Emma again. Welcome back to the spare room. This is part 12, I think, of this little myfordboy engine. Next job. So we need to make a cover for this back port on the seam and the cylinder block. And I've just cut out I've just got a block of brass there, which is way too big. It's inch by quarter, I think. It's about all I had. And as promised, I'm going to do him on the shaper. So it's a fairly simple part. We have a look at the drawing there. It's nearly 1 3/4 long and it's 540 wide. It's 1/8 inch thick and it's got 3 holes in it, 2 for bolts and 1 for a steam fitting. So that's pretty straightforward. So I've set this up with a fairly round toothed tool, a nice edge on him. And I'm struggling to find enough space in this workshop to set the camera back far enough to see this machine, but that's not a bad angle there. We're back here on the starting side. Something's not quite right here. I think in this side here in the pulley, or in the gear, there should be a flat compression spring that keeps the pressure on between these two parts, between the lead screw and the block, so it doesn't move. Or maybe it's a felt that's supposed to be in there. I'm still waiting for some information about that, but what happens is that when you feed this, it doesn't ratchet unless you keep a bit of friction on this side here. Then it feeds beautifully. The problem is with this machine so far for me is that it's so filthy dirty. There's like 100 years of grime in here. Wherever you touch it you get black. So it needs a good scrub up. And probably it'll get that in a full restoration, but we need to make a stand for it. It's not even bolted down. And for this job we're just relying on the residual weight to keep it all nice and stop it moving around too much. We've got some height adjustment there. That's a fair bit quicker than a file. We need to get this down to 580 or 560 thou. So there's a bit to go. So that's pretty close to size there now. that way around. Needs a bit off the end. It's a fairly straightforward job with this machine too, I think. Now, someone's probably already commented by now that I've got the vise the wrong way around, and I am fully aware of that. I've trammed it up this way around, and because to do this end you really need the support on the against the jaws. This old vise is pretty ordinary really. I think it's got a lot of potential. It needs a good clean up and a dress up and probably a little bit of scraping and a couple of helicoils in the holes so that you can adjust the jaws down. And probably it's not a bad vise. It's all hardened and everything's... Once upon a time it was really quite nice, but nowadays it's a bit rough. So I've got a couple of options on this eventually. The first one is probably to find a small vise or a decent, fit my toolmaker's vise up on here, which is got a bit deeper jaws and it'd be good for this sort of work. Getting it aligned nicely and getting it bolted down nice and firm is probably going to be a little bit more difficult, but that's the first option. The second option would be to do this up. Another option would be to find another little vise to go on here of a more modern sort of a size, but most of those are Chinese and I'm not really very interested in that. So we might persevere with this for this project, and when we start getting it back together and tidied up, well, that's something we're going to address. Another thing it really needs is a height adjuster on here. Probably a micrometer head on this face or on another face bolted down here, pointing upwards, with a face to mesh it on, so you can set it and use it as a stop to wind the head down to. That's probably the best way to deal with that. It's still something I'm thinking about, but that'd be really nice to have that on there, and then we could tilt the whole thing over. Another thing is a dial test indicator on here, which would probably be really good too. But dial test indicators on shaper heads, I reckon, they probably don't last long because of the vibration and the sudden shock, but we'll think about that too. So anyway, I've turned the vise round and I've set this up with the little toolmaker square. Nice and square there. And I face the bottom edge and it doesn't seem to have moved much, so I'm going to face the top and measure it for length. A nice depth micrometer would be really nice here. We're about 10th hour there, under 1.7. If we have a look at this, we're still a little bit too long, so we're going to give him a bit more of a go. Hold the ratchet out and just wind him back. The other thing it's going to need when it gets on its stand is a decent work light. This whole 1905 thing of working by gaslight really isn't conducive to good work. So that's pretty close to where we want to be with that. Have a look, we've got a block that's pretty well the right size there. It's still a bit thick. So next operation, is to set this up on some parallels and plane it down to 1/8 thick. So I don't know if you can see that there, but it's down to about 140 thou, which is another cut's going to touch the jaw there. So I'm going to leave that be. Rather than set it up again. There we go. Nice finish on there and there and there. And that bolts on there. So next job really is to drill the 3 holes on the centre line. These two are just pilot tap drill size so that we can spot the actual valve face or the valve block. And the middle one is tapped for a steam fitting, so that's pretty straightforward too, but it's getting a bit late here now, so I'm going to leave that till the morning. So I've marked these holes and drilled them. I've just marked them out with the scribing block, which is a pretty useful little tool. I get the height gauge out okay and set it up, and that's probably good too, and probably an easy way to get it on centre. But it's really not a big deal to set this with a ruler and scribe the centre. This one's drilled size to number 22, which is tapping size for 3/16 40 model engineer thread, and these are tapping size for 6BA. If we have a look in our BA bolt assortment, 6BA I think that's the one. They go on there nicely. So I've got a couple of them. Next job is to clamp this on the cylinder block and just spot these nicely so that we mark the holes, and then we can drill them to clearance and we can tap all the holes and we're done. And someone's sure to wonder how I held this while I drilled it, so what I've done is just clamp this up to a 1, 2, 3 block with a couple of parallels. I've actually used high speed steel here because that's kind of all I've got at the moment. So that's nice and flat on the base there, and there's no rock or anything in that, and this is sticking up a little bit so we can line that up. And I reckon I can hold that in place. nicely, and we'll just spot those 2 holes in the drill press. And next job is to tap them through nice and square with a 6BA tap. They go into those holes, and there's actually bolts that go through these holes to hold it down, so they're not holding by much, so I think the couple of bolts I've got to be shortened. We'll do that with just a nut on them. And chop them off and file them up and unscrew the nut. And we should be doing okay. So somewhere here I've got a 3/16 by 40 Model Engineer tap, which is a really neat fine thread tap for steam fittings and stuff. So all we've got to do is find it. So there we go. I've drilled them out to clearance, or a little bit of clearance. They're not far out, as a couple of thou, but that fits nice and flush both ways round, which I'm really pleased about. It's got a 3/16 hole tap there, a nice fine thread. These screws have been chopped off so that we can still fit a 5BA thread, a 5BA bolt through there. And that's that part finished. So don't forget to subscribe and like. I do apologise, it's been a couple of weeks since I put up a video, but we've got that bit done. There's not much more to do on this engine, really. There's pistons and eccentrics and rods, and that put it all together. That's about it. So time permitting, I might get in and do a bit more this week. So thanks for watching, be kind to each other, and more soon.